The afternoon sun hung lazily over the city, warming the sidewalks and casting long shadows from the tall buildings. People moved quickly along the street, each wrapped in their own world. Cars honked in the distance. Someone laughed loudly near a cafe, and a bus hissed to a stop as its doors swung open. It was just another busy date, at least for most people. But for the old woman standing near the crosswalk, everything looked strange and blurred, as if she were waking from a dream she didn't understand. She stood very still at first, almost blending into the crowd. Her gray hair was neatly pinned back, though a few strands had slipped loose and fluttered in the warm breeze. Her hands trembled slightly as she held a small purse pressed against her chest. She looked to her left, then slowly to her right, trying to study the passing faces. None of them were familiar. None of them looked like someone she could call for help. The crowd did not slow down for her. People rushed past her, some talking on phones, some carrying shopping bags, some just eager to get to wherever they needed to be. A few glanced at her, but only in the quick, careless way people glance at anything that briefly gets in their path. She tried to speak to a woman who walked by, raising a hand weakly. But the woman didn't notice or pretended she didn't. The old woman's hand lowered again, trembling more now. For a moment, she tried to remember which direction she had come from. She shut her eyes tightly, as if squeezing them closed might help her recall something. She could picture vague shapes a hallway, bright lights, people in suits rushing around her, but she couldn't place them together. She opened her eyes again, even more confused. She took a small step forward, then another. Her legs felt unsteady, and she kept one hand on a streetlight pole to balance herself. "Excuse me," she whispered, toward a passing man, but he was too busy adjusting his headphones to hear her. Another person accidentally brushed her shoulder while reaching for their coat pocket, but didn't stop to say anything. Her breathing grew faster. With every passing minute, the world around her felt bigger and noisier. She looked down at her purse and opened it with shaking fingers. Inside were a few tissues, a small makeup compact, some folded papers, and a phone. But when she pressed the power button on the phone, the screen remained black. Maybe it was dead. Or maybe she had pressed the wrong button, she wasn't sure. She kept staring at it, hoping it would magically turn on. Someone behind her sighed loudly because she was blocking the sidewalk. The person stepped around her and kept walking without saying a word. The old woman stepped back, frightened, and almost stumbled. She grabbed the pole again to steady herself. Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away with the edge of her sleeve. Hoping no one saw, she looked around for somewhere quiet, someplace where she could think. Across the street was a small bench near a bus stop. It wasn't far, but even that short distance felt overwhelming. The noise of the traffic seemed louder now. Cars rushed by, and people kept crossing without looking up from their phones. She took another breath, clutching her purse tightly, then slowly stepped toward the crosswalk. The signal changed, and a wave of people moved forward. She tried to walk with them, but her steps were slow and unsure. Someone bumped her lightly from behind, causing her to wobble. She whispered a soft apology, even though it wasn't her fault. By the time she reached the other side of the street, her heart was pounding. When she finally reached the bus stop, she lowered herself onto the bench with great care. Her legs felt weak, and her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She tried to calm herself by looking around, hoping something might look familiar. A tall billboard, a row of shops, a cafe with a chalkboard sign none of it meant anything to her. She felt like she had been dropped into a place she had never seen before. A group of teenagers passed by, laughing loudly among themselves. She watched them for a moment, wondering if she should ask them for help. But she was afraid they might ignore her too, just like the others did. She didn't want to feel more embarrassed or more lost than she already did. Next to the bus stop, a mother pulled her small child along, telling him to hurry or they would miss the next bus. A man in a suit checked his watch impatiently. Another woman scrolled through her messages without looking up. Everybody seemed to know exactly where they needed to be. Everybody except her. She closed her purse gently and held it in her lap. A small sigh escaped her lips, the kind that comes from a mix of exhaustion and fear. She whispered to herself, trying again to remember. "Where was I going?" she murmured. "Where did I come from?" But her mind remained foggy. filled with bits of memories that didn't fit together. A light wind passed through, brushing her hair and making her shiver. She wrapped her arms around herself, wishing she had worn a warmer sweater. She looked up at the sky for comfort, hoping something as simple as a cloud might spark a memory. But the sky only reminded her of how small she felt in that moment. Minutes passed. Maybe 10. Maybe 20. Time felt strange. She kept watching the sidewalk, hoping someone might stop. Someone kind enough to ask if she needed help. But the faces kept changing. No one paused. No one noticed the way her hands trembled or how frightened her eyes looked. Her throat tightened as she realized, like she had never felt this lost before. Not even as a child. She had always been the sort of person who knew her surroundings, who planned ahead, who kept everything organized. But now all those abilities seemed far away from her, as if she had left them behind somewhere. She reached into her purse again and found a small folded card. Her eyes lit up for a moment, thinking it might be helpful. She opened it, hoping it might show an address or a name she could recognize. But the card only had a decorative pattern on one side and a handwritten note on the other, her own writing, though shaky. "Don't forget your appointment." "Appointment?" she whispered. "Where? With who?" She closed the card slowly, feeling even more overwhelmed. A bus pulled up in front of her, its doors opening with a loud clatter. People lined up to board. The driver glanced her way but said nothing. She didn't move. She had no idea if that bus could help her or take her farther away from where she needed to be. When the last passenger stepped on, the driver shut the doors, and the bus rolled away. She watched it disappear down the street, and a small wave of loneliness washed over her. Everything felt like it was moving, while she remained stuck, unable to find her way. She rubbed her hands together for warmth, trying to steady herself. She looked at the people again. Some were rushing. Some were relaxed. Some were annoyed. But none of them looked like the kind of person who would pause long enough to notice she was lost. She wondered if maybe she should try calling out louder. Maybe people weren't ignoring her on purpose. Maybe they just didn't realize she needed help. But every time she tried to speak, her voice felt too small. It's too easy to drown in the city's noise. Her breathing grew shallow. She tried to stand again, thinking maybe she should walk a little farther, search for someone who looked friendly. But as soon as she rose to her feet, her legs shook and she had to sit back down. She felt weaker now, both physically and emotionally. "I can't stay here," she whispered to herself, "but I don't know where to go." Her eyes filled again, but she blinked away the tears, not wanting to cry in front of strangers. She took another breath and looked around again, hoping for some kind of sign, some kind of guidance. The city around her kept moving, kept buzzing with life, but none of it offered her comfort. She lowered her gaze to her lap, staring at her hands. They looked older than she remembered, more wrinkled, more fragile. She wondered how long she had been wandering. An hour more? She couldn't tell. Time blended together in the blur of fear. Then, faintly, she heard someone across the street shout to a friend. She looked up, startled. For a second, she thought someone was calling her, but they weren't. They were laughing with friends, running toward a store. Her brief hope faded again. She slowly leaned back against the bench and closed her eyes. Maybe if she rested for a moment, her mind would clear. Maybe she would remember something, a street name, a building, a person who was supposed to be with her. She didn't want to fall asleep, but she needed to calm herself. She took slow breaths and tried to steady her shaking hands. The world around her kept moving, but she felt frozen. She wondered if anyone would ever notice her. If anyone would stop, if anyone would care. She had no idea that her life was about to change. She didn't know that someone would soon walk toward her, someone who would see what no one else had seen all day. She didn't know that help was coming, help she never expected, from someone she would never have guessed. For now, she sat alone on that bench at the bus stop, holding her purse tightly, waiting, hoping the world would slow down long enough for just one person to notice her trembling hands and the worry in her tired eyes. The old woman remained on the bench, trying to calm her trembling hands. The city kept moving around her, loud and restless, but she felt removed from all of it. She kept swallowing hard, trying to stop the anxious feeling rising in her chest. Her eyes drifted from the ground to the faces passing by, searching for one kind pair of eyes. One person who might stop long enough to see how lost she really was. Across the street, near the entrance of a small grocery store, a teenage boy leaned against a metal railing, waiting for his bus. He wore worn sneakers and a faded backpack that had patches sewn onto it. His headphones hung loosely around his neck, and he tapped his fingers gently on the strap of his bag. He looked tired, as if he had come from a long day at school or a part-time shift. But he still watched the world around him with quiet curiosity. He noticed things most people ignored. He noticed the man in a suit pacing impatiently while checking his watch every few seconds. He noticed a toddler trying to chase a pigeon while the mother tried to keep the child from running into the street. And he noticed the old woman on the bench across from him. At first, he didn't think much of it. She looked like any elderly grandmother waiting for a ride or taking a short rest. But then he saw the way she kept wringing her hands. He saw the way her eyes darted around, full of worry instead of calm. He watched her stand slightly, only to sit again because her legs seemed too weak. He saw how she tried to speak to people who walked by. But the words never fully left her mouth. Or maybe they did, and no one listened. He watched for a minute longer. Then, too, something in his chest tightened. He knew what it felt like to be ignored. He knew what it meant to need help but feel invisible. He glanced at the bus schedule posted on the pole near him. His bus wouldn't arrive for at least 15 minutes. He looked back at the woman. She lowered her eyes to her purse again. Defeated, he pulled his backpack strap higher on his shoulder, took a breath, and crossed the street. The moment he stepped off the curb, the sounds of the city seemed to grow louder, cars rushing by, a truck rumbling past. People talking in overlapping conversations, but he kept walking. He moved carefully, weaving through the crowd until he reached the bench where she sat up close. She looked even more fragile than she had from a distance. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, and the wrinkles around her eyes deepened every time she blinked. She clutched her purse so tightly that her knuckles had turned pale. He stopped a few steps away from her so he wouldn't startle her. For a moment, he hesitated. What if she didn't want help? What if she got scared? What if she thought he was bothering her? He took a slow breath, steadied himself, and spoke softly. "Ma'am," he said, his voice gentle. "Are you okay?" She flinched slightly at the sound, then looked up. Her eyes were watery, tired, and uncertain. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out at first. He waited patiently, giving her time. After a few seconds, she managed to whisper, I'm not sure." Her voice cracked a little, and she looked down again, embarrassed. He nodded slowly, stepping a little closer, but still giving her space. "It's all right. You look like you might need help. Can I do something for you?" The old woman swallowed hard. She didn't want to seem weak, but fear had been sitting in her chest for so long that finally someone asking felt like a lifeline. "I think I'm lost," she admitted softly. "I don't know where I'm supposed to go." He relaxed a little. He had guessed as much, but hearing her say it made him feel even more protective. "Okay," he said kindly. "We can figure it out. You're not alone now." The words seemed to comfort her, even if only slightly. Her fingers loosened around her purse. She took a shaky breath. "Do you have someone you can call?" he asked. She nodded, then shook her head, confused. I think I do. I had a phone. It won't turn on." She opened her purse with trembling hands and held out the unresponsive phone. He gently took it, careful not to make her feel judged. He pressed the power button, then held it down. Nothing happened. He flipped it over. "Battery might be dead," he said softly. Her shoulders dropped even more. "Oh." He handed it back to her. She stared at the blank screen, as though willing it to show a number or name. "It's okay," he said again, trying to reassure her. "We can try a different way. Do you remember where you were before this? A store? A building? Anything." She shut her eyes, trying so hard to pull a memory forward. But it came in blurry pieces: hallway lights, people speaking politely, a large room filled with chairs. "I don't remember exactly," she whispered. "I just know there were a lot of people." and then somehow I walked outside. I thought someone was behind me, but—" Her voice trailed off. He nodded slowly. She was scared, confused, and alone. That was enough for him to stay. "Do you mind if I sit?" he asked. She shook her head. He sat beside her, close enough to be supportive, but not so close that she felt crowded. People continued walking by, but now he was the one shielding her from the flow of the crowd. His presence created a small bubble of safety around her. She looked at him carefully now, studying his face. He looked young, maybe 16 or 17, but his eyes were warm, steady, and full of concern. "What's your name?" she asked softly. He smiled slightly. "You can just call me Kid," he said. "It's okay. No pressure to remember anything right now." She nodded gratefully. For a moment, they both sat quietly. It was the first peaceful moment she had felt in what seemed like hours. He noticed her hands trembling again. After hesitating for a second, he gently extended his hand. "It's okay," he said softly. "You can hold on to me if you want. I'm right here." Her eyes filled slightly. No one else had stopped. No one had even slowed down. And now here was this boy, someone half her size and 1/10, her age, offering comfort with nothing but kindness in his voice. She placed her hand in his. His hand was warm, steady. She felt her fear loosen just a little bit. "It's all right," he said again, almost in a whisper. "We're going to get you somewhere safe." She nodded slowly, calming slightly under his gentle tone. He glanced around the street. Crowds buzzed past them, not paying attention, but a few people stole quick glances, some surprised, some curious. It wasn't common to see a teenager holding the hand of a stranger. Guiding her through the chaos of the city, he ignored the looks. They didn't matter. "Let's move somewhere quieter," he said softly. "Maybe there is a cafe close by where you can sit inside and rest. Then we can try to figure out who to call." She hesitated. I don't want to be a bother." He shook his head immediately. "You're not. I promise." She squeezed his hand gently. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm so frightened. I've never felt like this." "I know," he said quietly. "But you're with me now. You don't have to be scared alone anymore." Her breath shook as she exhaled, but she stood slowly with him. Her legs felt unsteady, so he moved at her pace, matching every small step. He didn't rush her. He didn't show impatience. He walked as if her safety was the only thing that mattered. They reached a small cafe just a few doors down. It wasn't fancy, just a cozy place with warm lights and a chalkboard menu outside. The air smelled like fresh pastries and roasted coffee beans. He pushed the door open gently, letting her go in first. The sudden quiet inside made her shoulders relax. He guided her to a table near the corner, a warm, safe spot away from the door. "Sit," he said kindly. "I'll get you some water." She nodded. He walked to the counter where a barista looked tired from a long shift. He explained softly, "She's not feeling well. Could I get a glass of water for her, please?" The barista handed it to him without question. He brought it back, set it in front of her, and watched her take a slow sip. The warmth of the cafe, the kindness of the boy, and the gentle quiet made her feel human again. Not lost or invisible. "Do you feel a little better?" he asked. She nodded weakly. "A little." "Good," he said. "We're going to figure this out." She blinked, overwhelmed by the gentleness in his voice. "Why did you stop?" she asked softly. "So many people walked by." "Why did you stop?" He looked down, shy for the first time. He rubbed the back of his neck and shrugged lightly. "Because you look like someone who shouldn't be alone," he said quietly. "And I know what that feels like." Her breath caught. She didn't ask him to explain. She didn't need to. She just held his hand again, in that small cafe. With the city noise muffled behind the glass windows, a strange and unexpected connection began, one rooted in kindness, empathy, and the simple, powerful decision of one teen who chose to see what every other person had walked past. She had no idea yet that the boy sitting across from her would not only help her find her way home, but change her life in ways she never imagined. The cafe felt warm and safe compared to the noise outside. The old woman held the glass of water with both hands, trying to steady her breathing. The boy sat across from her, watching her with quiet concern. He didn't rush her. He didn't push her to talk. He simply stayed close, offering a kind presence that made her feel less alone. For a moment, they didn't speak. The soft music playing in the cafe mixed with the gentle clinking of cups from the counter. People around them talked in low voices, but the old woman didn't hear any of it clearly. She kept her focus on the boy sitting there, the only person who had stopped, the only one who saw she needed help. He leaned forward slightly. "Do you remember anything new?" he asked softly. She tried. She really did. She closed her eyes and pictured the bright hallway again, the one she had seen in her mind earlier. She remembered a long table, papers spread out, people speaking politely and nodding at her. But she still didn't know what any of it meant. "Only pieces," she whispered. "Nothing clear. I feel like everything is behind a fog." "That's okay," he said. "We'll figure it out together." "Ah!" She watched him carefully. His calm voice eased some of the tightness in her chest. She took another sip of water, the coolness helping her a little. The cafe door opened, letting in a rush of outside air. A couple walked in, laughing about something they had seen on the street. Their energy filled the space. But the boy stayed focused on the woman. "Maybe we should check the papers you have," he suggested. "Something in your purse might help." She nodded, opening her purse again. This time, her hands were steadier. She pulled out the small folded papers, the ones she hadn't fully looked at earlier. She handed them to him, hoping they held answers. He unfolded them slowly, making sure not to crease them more. The first sheet looked like a schedule, with times written along the side. The second was a brochure showing a tall building with glass walls and clean architecture. He held it closer, reading the print carefully. "It says Community Development Forum," he said. "Were you at some kind of event?" She looked at the brochure, then at him. I think I was. But I don't remember why I was there." He turned the paper gently. On the back was a list of speakers at the event. One name was at the top, printed in bold. He didn't read it aloud yet. He looked at her instead. "Does this name mean anything to you?" he asked, pointing at it. She leaned in, squinting. The letters felt familiar. The name tugged at her memory. Her mind tried to reach for it, but the fog refused to lift fully. "I know it," she said softly. "I think I do. But I don't know how." The boy didn't push her. "It's okay. We have time." She looked around the cafe again, watching people sip coffee, talk, type on laptops. She wished she could be calm like them, sure of her day and her destination. "Maybe someone from the event is looking for you," the boy said. "Events like that usually have big crowds. Do you remember if someone came with you?" She shook her head. I don't think so. I remember walking alone. But I also remember voices calling after me. Or maybe I imagined that..." Her voice trembled slightly and he noticed. "Hey," he said, gently tapping the table. "You're doing great. We're getting somewhere." She smiled weakly. "You're very kind." "I just want to help," he said simply. The old woman watched him again. She saw how genuine he was. She saw no impatience or annoyance, only sincerity and a quiet strength. The world had ignored her for hours, but this boy made her feel seen. She placed her hand on the table. Her fingers brushed lightly against his. He didn't pull away. "Could you stay with me a little longer?" She asked. "Of course," he replied immediately. Outside the cafe window, the sky had started to change. The soft orange glow of late afternoon spread across the buildings. It made the street look calmer, gentler. "We could walk to that building," he suggested, pointing to the address on the brochure. "It's not too far. Maybe someone there knows you." She hesitated. "I'm scared to walk again," she admitted. "Outside feels too loud." He thought about that. Then he said, "We don't have to rush. We can wait a bit. You can rest." She nodded gratefully. A waitress passed by and left a napkin on their table. "Your water's on the house," she said warmly. "Take your time." The old woman thanked her. The kindness made her throat tighten. So many people had walked past her earlier without a second glance, but here, in this small cafe, she felt a little less invisible. The boy watched her closely, noticing the change in her mood. "You look a bit better," he said. "I feel safer," she admitted. They stayed there for a while longer. The boy told her about the street outside, how the bus stop near the corner always had long lines during school hours, how the grocery store brought out fresh fruit in the evening, how stray cats sometimes slept behind the cafe on warm days. He spoke softly, choosing simple stories to help her relax. She listened, smiling faintly at some of the things he shared. His stories were ordinary, but they made her forget her fear for a moment. He had a gentle way of speaking, turning everyday moments into something warm. After a while, she looked at the brochure again, her eyes lingering on the name at the top. Something inside her stirred, something familiar. "What if I used to work there?" she whispered suddenly. "What if I've been in that building before?" The boy's eyebrows lifted. "Maybe you did," he said. "That would explain why the name looks familiar." She rubbed her forehead, trying to remember. "I feel like I've seen those hallways before. They felt important." Her heart beat a little faster now. A small spark of memory flickered, not clear, but there. "Do you want to try going there?" he asked. "We can take it slow." She hesitated again, but this time not out of fear, out of uncertainty about the memory itself. "If I go there," she said softly, "and no one knows me, what then?" "Then we keep trying," he replied gently. "I'm not leaving you until we find someone who does." Her eyes softened. "You're too kind." "It's not kindness," he said quietly. "It's just what people should do." She nodded. "All right. Let's try." Before they stood, he helped her finish her water. The warmth of the cafe had loosened her fear enough for her to attempt moving again. The boy got up first and moved beside her, offering his arm this time. She held on to him carefully, grateful for the support. When they stepped outside, the breeze greeted them. It wasn't as harsh now. The city felt a little less intimidating with him by her side. He walked slowly, matching her pace perfectly. Every step she took felt steadier than the last. People glanced at them as they passed a teenage boy guiding an elderly woman down the sidewalk, but he didn't care. He focused only on her. "How are you feeling?" he asked quietly. "A little stronger," she replied. They reached the street corner, and he made sure to check the signals before crossing. He kept a protective hand near her back, just in case she stumbled. But she didn't. Her steps, though slow, were sure. After a short walk, a tall glass building from the brochure came into view. The old woman stopped, staring at it with wide eyes. Something inside her stirred against something deep. "I know this place," she whispered. "I've been here before." Her voice shook, but not from fear this time, from recognition. The building looked grand, with polished floors inside and large windows that reflected the city lights. A security guard stood near the entrance, welcoming people who came in. As they approached the doors, the boy said, "If you feel overwhelmed, we can stop any time." She walked forward. Inside, the spacious lobby buzzed with people moving between elevators and reception desks. The moment she stepped onto the polished floor, she stopped completely. Her eyes widened. Her breath caught. She looked around as if searching for something familiar. The boy watched her carefully. "Do you remember something?" She took a slow breath. "I think so. Something about meetings. People waiting for me. People greeting me." She placed a hand on her chest. "I think I wasn't just someone attending the event." The boy waited quietly. "I think I was someone important here," she whispered. Her voice echoed lightly off the tall walls. The boy's eyes softened. "Let's talk to the front desk," he said. "Maybe they'll know you." She nodded again, steadying herself. The receptionist looked up as they approached, a tall woman with a calm expression. "Good evening," she said. "How can I help you?" The old woman hesitated. Her voice barely rose. I think I'm supposed to be here, but I can't remember everything." The receptionist's polite smile softened into concern. She stood a little straighter. The boy spoke gently. "She got lost earlier. I found her on the street. We're trying to see if someone here knows her." The receptionist nodded, already reaching for the phone. "Of course. Just a moment. The old woman looked around the lobby again, her heart racing. Something about the place tugged at her memory like a thread ready to unravel. She whispered to the boy, "I think I've come home." He looked at her gently. "Then let's find out." They had no idea what they were about to discover. No idea how big the truth would be, or how deeply it would change both of their lives. But they were about to learn very soon. The old woman woke up slowly the next morning, lying on the small bed in the shelter. For a moment she didn't know where she was. The ceiling above her was plain, painted a soft beige color, and the room smelled faintly of soap and warm blankets. She blinked a few times, confused. Then she remembered the night before, the long walk with the boy, the kind staff who offered her a room, and the sense of relief she had felt as she finally lay down. Outside the window, early sunlight touched the sky with a pale gold glow. She listened to the faint sounds of people moving in the hallway, footsteps shuffling, quiet knock here and there, someone humming a tune. It felt peaceful, but also strange. She had not slept outside her own home in many years. Waking up somewhere unfamiliar stirred something uneasy in her. She sat up slowly, taking a moment to steady herself. Her hands trembled the way they often did lately. She pressed one hand gently to her forehead, trying to piece together the little bits of memory she still had. She remembered the street, the confusion, and the fear. And she remembered the boy, how he had taken her hand and stayed with her when everyone else simply walked past. She whispered, almost to herself, "He didn't leave me." A soft knock came at the door. "Good morning," a woman's voice said gently. "Are you awake?" The old woman cleared her throat. "Yes, dear. You can come in." A staff member stepped inside with a friendly smile. She carried a small tray with tea, a bowl of fruit, and a warm muffin. "Thought you might want something to eat before we talk about the day." The old woman nodded, grateful. "Thank you." While she ate slowly, the woman sat on the chair nearby. "We spoke with the boy last night before he left. He said he'll come back today to check on you." A little spark lit in the old woman's eyes. He said that." "Yes," the woman replied. "He seemed worried and wanted to make sure you're okay." The old woman looked down at her hands. "He's a good one. A very good one." The staff member gave a small smile, then asked gently, "Do you remember your full name today? Maybe where you live?" The old woman breathed in and out slowly. She tried to search her mind, but the memories slipped away as soon as she reached for them. I know pieces," she whispered, "but they don't stay long. It feels like holding water in my hands." "That's all right," the woman said. "You don't need to rush. When the boy comes, maybe something he says will help." After breakfast, the old woman was guided to a small common area where she sat near a window. She watched the city waking up, people heading to work, students rushing past with backpacks, cars moving through the streets. She wondered if someone out there was looking for her. She hoped they were. She hoped she wouldn't just disappear into the city like a leaf blown into a storm drain. Around late morning, she saw a familiar figure approaching through the glass door of the shelter. The boy walked quickly, his steps filled with purpose. He had changed clothes, but his warm expression was the same. As soon as he stepped inside, his eyes found her. "There you are," he said softly, coming over to her. "I wanted to check on you." She felt tears sting the corners of her eyes. "I'm glad you came back." He sat beside her. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," she answered. "Still a little lost inside my head, but being here helps. And seeing you helps too." He gave a shy smile. "I'm just trying to make sure you're okay." They talked for a while, and during their conversation, the old woman suddenly paused, squinting slightly. "You look like someone," she murmured. Someone from your family?" he asked. "No. Someone from a place I used to work," she said slowly, her voice drifting. "But I can't remember the name. Something big. Very big." The boy leaned in, patient. "A company?" She nodded. "Yes. Very big company." The staff member, who had been quietly nearby, approached. "Maybe we can help figure this out. Do you remember anything at all? A building? A logo? A color?" The old woman closed her eyes. For a moment there was only silence. Then she whispered, Tall glass building. Blue and silver sign. People always in suits. Meetings, decisions, important ones. That sounds like a major office headquarters, the boy said. She opened her eyes suddenly, as if a small flame had sparked inside her. They used to call me something there. Not my first name. Something else. A title. She tried harder, pressing her trembling fingers to her temples. I can almost hear them. Ma'am, the board is waiting. Or, ma'am, the investors need your signature. The room fell still. The boy exchanged a look with the staff member. You were someone important there? He asked gently. The old woman swallowed. I think I was... The staff member asked softly, Do you remember what your office looked like? Large, she said. Big windows. A view of the river. A long table. People sitting around it waiting for me to speak. The boy's eyes widened slightly. You might have been the boss. She shook her head as if unsure, but deep inside something felt familiar. Maybe, she said quietly, but it feels like a story someone once told me, not my own. The staff member touched her shoulder kindly. Memory can come back in pieces. It's okay if it feels strange. The boy leaned back slightly, thinking. Do you remember the name of the company? Even just a part of it? She tried to pull the memory forward. She whispered bits of sound, half-formed words that didn't stay long enough to make sense. Then she sighed, frustrated. It slips away. That's all right, the boy said. We'll figure it out. They sat together quietly for a moment. Then the boy stood. Wait here. I have an idea. He asked one of the staff members to borrow a tablet so he could look up pictures of the big companies in the city. He sat next to her again, showing her building after building. He held the screen steady, patient, letting her take her time. Most of them meant nothing to her. But then they reached a picture of a tall glass, a tower with a large silver and blue sign near the top. The letters glowed softly in the evening light. The old woman's breath caught. That, she whispered, touching the screen with trembling fingers. That one. I know that one. The boy glanced at the name on the building, then looked back at her. Do you work there? She shook her head slowly, and then nodded faintly. No, not work. Something else. Bigger. I remember walking into it every morning. People would stand up when I entered the room. Staff member asked softly, Were you a leader there? The old woman looked up, eyes suddenly sharper. Yes, leader. The boy leaned closer. What kind of leader? She whispered one word. Owner. The boy froze. The staff member's eyes widened slightly. The old woman's own eyes filled with confusion and disbelief. But how could that be? How could someone like me, someone who can't even remember where she lives, be the owner of something so big? Her voice trembled, a mix of fear and doubt. The boy placed his hand over hers. Sometimes even the strongest people forget things. That doesn't change who they really are. She looked at him, studying his face gently. You really believe that? I do. Just then the shelter manager approached with a cautious but hopeful expression. I think we should contact the company. If she really has a connection there, someone might recognize her. The old woman grew nervous. What if I'm wrong? What if they don't know me at all? The boy squeezed her hand. Then we'll still be with you. Shh. She felt steadier after hearing that. The staff made a few calls, and within an hour, they received a response. Not from a receptionist. Not from a regular employee, but from someone in the company's top administration. The message was short but urgent. We believe we know who she is. We are sending someone immediately. The old woman's chest fluttered with anxiety. She sat up straighter, pulling her shawl around her shoulders. The boy stayed close beside her, trying to calm her with small smiles. About 40 minutes later, a black car pulled up outside the shelter. A middle-aged woman in a dark suit stepped out with a worried but focused expression. She hurried inside, looking around until her eyes landed on the old woman. The moment she saw her, she gasped and covered her mouth. Oh my goodness, she whispered, tears filling her eyes. She rushed forward. We've been searching for you everywhere. The old woman looked startled, unsure whether to stand or stay seated. The woman fell to her knees beside her chair. taking the old woman's hands gently. "It's really you. Everyone has been sick with worry." The boy watched quietly, unsure what to say. The old woman blinked. "Do you know me?" The woman nodded quickly, crying softly. "Of course I know you. You built the company. You led it for more than 30 years. You shaped everything we do today." The old woman stared at her, overwhelmed. The woman continued, her voice trembling. "You're our founder, our guide, our mentor. Nothing would exist without you." The room fell into a hush. The boy watched hope rise slowly in the old woman's eyes, tentative, shaky, but real. "Why? Why was I alone on the street?" the old woman whispered. The woman in the suit wiped her face. "You disappeared from home yesterday morning? Your caregiver went to make breakfast, and when she came back, you were gone. We've had the police searching. We thought." She stopped herself, breathing shakily. "We thought something terrible had happened." The old woman's face softened with understanding slowly. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "You didn't," the woman insisted gently. "You mean everything to us?" The boy spoke softly. She didn't know who she was. She was scared. People ignored her. The woman looked at him, gratitude shining through her tears. "Thank you for helping her. Truly." The old woman squeezed his hand. "If not for him, I might still be wandering." The woman nodded. "I want to bring you home now. Everyone is waiting. But if you want him to come with you for support, we can arrange that." The old woman looked at the boy with pleading eyes. "Would you?" He nodded without hesitation. "Of course. I'll go with you." They helped her up slowly. The staff gathered to wish her well, relieved she was found. The boy stayed close as they walked her outside toward the waiting car. She paused before getting in, taking one last look at the shelter and the city street. Then she turned to the boy. "I feel like I'm stepping back into a life I don't fully remember," she whispered. "Promise me you'll stay until I understand it." He nodded. "I'll stay." She smiled shakily, trusting him, and as the car door closed gently behind her, something inside her some forgotten. Peace began to stir awake, not fully, not yet, but enough to start leading her back to the truth of who she had been, and who she still was. The car ride felt quiet, almost too quiet, even though the city outside was full of noise. The old woman sat between the boy and the woman in the suit, her hands resting on her lap. She stared out the window, watching the buildings pass by like pieces of a dream she wasn't sure she belonged to. Every so often she touched the window gently, as if the glass itself might remind her of something she had forgotten. The boy kept glancing at her, trying to guess what she might be feeling. She didn't speak much, but her eyes told him enough. She was nervous, curious, afraid, and also strangely hopeful. It was as if she was returning to a place that her heart remembered even if her mind did not, as the car approached the tall glass building from the picture, one she had recognized earlier. The old woman leaned forward slowly. The sunlight reflected off the blue and silver sign, making it shine. Her throat tightened when she saw it. "I used to walk through those doors," she whispered. "You did," the woman beside her replied softly. "Every day for many years." The car stopped, and before they even opened the doors, several people from inside the building rushed out. Some looked relieved, some looked emotional, and some just seemed overwhelmed that she was standing there in front of them. But they all shared the same expression: deep respect. When the old woman stepped out of the car, the group fell silent. It wasn't the kind of silence people made out of fear. It was the silence people made when someone important arrived. Someone they admired. She felt the weight of the moment and trembled, but didn't step back. The boy stayed by her side, ready to support her if she needed it. A tall man in a suit approached carefully, Kay almost afraid to move too fast. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "we've been praying for your safety. The whole team has been searching." The old woman nodded politely, though she still didn't remember him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to cause all this worry. We're just glad you're safe," he replied gently. They led her inside the building. The lobby felt huge, with polished floors and high ceilings. Something in the air smelled familiar, like a perfume she once wore, or the scent of papers she used to sign. She paused in front of the reception desk. A memory flickered, someone greeting her every morning with a smile and a respectful nod. She tried to hold on to the memory, but it slipped away. The group guided her to a private elevator. While they waited, the boy stood close, watching the old woman's face shift between recognition and confusion. "You don't have to force the memories," he said softly. "They'll come when they're ready." She took his hand gently. "You remind me to breathe," she whispered. "Thank you." When the elevator opened on the top floor, she stepped out and froze. The hallway was quiet, lined with framed pictures, awards, achievements, photos of important business moments. There were images of big gatherings, charity events, meetings with people who looked powerful. But one picture made her stop completely. It was a portrait of her. She stood beside it, staring at the face in the frame. A younger version of herself. Strong chin, sharp eyes, confident smile. She looked like someone who ran things, someone who made decisions that shaped the world around her. "That's me," she whispered, almost frightened by the truth. "Yes," the woman in the suit said softly. "You've built everything we have here." The old woman stared at the picture for a long time. "I look different." The boy nodded gently. "You look strong." "I don't feel strong," she whispered. "You don't have to," he replied. "People can still see strength in you." They opened the door to her old office. It was large, with tall windows overlooking the river. The sunlight poured in and reflected off the polished table. The old woman walked inside slowly, touching the back of a chair, then the edge of the desk. Every part of the room felt familiar yet distant, like remembering a song only from its rhythm and not its words. She walked to the window and placed her hand on the glass. A memory stirred standing there years ago, making a decision that changed the direction of the company. She remembered signing documents. She remembered long nights. She remembered people thanking her for giving them jobs and opportunities. A soft gasp escaped her lips as another memory flickered. She was younger, giving a speech to a room full of employees. She spoke about fairness, kindness, and giving back to the community. She believed in helping people rise, especially those who had been ignored or underestimated. The boy watched her carefully. "Are you remembering things?" "Not clearly," she said, "but feelings. I remember how it felt to stand here. I remember wanting to help people." One of the board members stepped closer. "You always believed in giving chances to those who needed them most," he said respectfully. "You changed many lives." The old woman blinked at that. "I wish I could remember them." "You don't have to remember to still be the person you are," the boy said. She turned to him, smiling a small but warm smile. The staff invited her to sit at her old desk. A leather chair waited there, untouched. As she settled into it, a strange mix of fear and peace washed over her. She didn't remember everything, but she could feel something returning slowly. "Would you like some tea?" someone asked. "Yes," she replied quietly. "Tea would be nice." While the tea arrived, the boy explored the office gently, looking at photos and items on the shelves. He found pictures of her visiting schools, giving speeches, shaking hands with people who looked grateful. He felt proud of her even, though he had only met her the day before. When the tea arrived, the old woman lifted the cup with both hands. She felt calm, almost grounded, like the world around her was slowly settling into place. "Do I still work here?" she asked softly. The board member smiled kindly. "No, ma'am. You retired a few years ago. You handed the company over to your team. You said you wanted to rest and spend time with your family." "My family?" she whispered. "They're on their way right now," the woman in the suit said gently. "Your sister and your nephew. They'll be here within the hour." The old woman's breath shook slightly. I didn't know I had a nephew." "You do," the woman said. "He loves you very much." The old woman closed her eyes. She felt her heart warm at that thought. A short while later, the door opened, and her sister walked in. She looked older, too, with soft wrinkles around kind eyes. Her steps were fast and full of emotion. The old woman stood up slowly. Her sister rushed to her. and wrapped her in a tight hug. "You scared us," she whispered through tears. "You scared us so much?" The old woman rested her head on her sister's shoulder. "I didn't mean to," she said softly. "I just forgot." Everything felt strange. Her sister pulled back and held her face gently. "You're here now. We won't let you wander off again." A younger man stepped forward, her nephew. He looked relieved but overwhelmed. "We missed you," he said quietly. She reached out and touched his cheek gently. "I wish I remembered all of you." "It's okay," he said. "You don't have to remember for us to love you." The boy stood back, unsure if he should step closer. But the old woman looked over at him and motioned for him to join them. Her sister turned to him with gratitude. "Thank you for helping her," she said. "You were brave and kind." He shrugged, slightly embarrassed. "I just saw she needed help." The old woman took his hand again. "You saw me when no one else did." Her sister smiled warmly. "You're always welcome at our home." The boy smiled shyly. "Thank you." They spent the rest of the day walking her through more memories. They showed her old photos, letters, awards she had received. Some moments returned in soft pieces, some stayed hidden. But she felt surrounded by love the whole time. Later that evening, as the sun painted the sky in warm orange and pink, the old woman sat in her old office one last time. The boy sat beside her, both of them watching the river through the tall windows. "Do you feel better now?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "I may not have all my memories back, but I know I have people who care about me, and that is enough." The boy nodded softly. "I'm glad." She looked at him for a long moment. "You changed my life." He looked surprised. "Me? But I didn't do anything big." She shook her head gently. "You did something bigger than most ever do. When everyone ignored me, you took my hand. You saw me as a person, and you stayed. That is the kind of thing that changes the world. One heart at a time." He lowered his eyes, touched by her words. "You should come visit me," she said warmly. "Often if you can." "I can do that," he replied with a smile. "I'd like to." A knock came at the door. Her sister peeked in. "We're ready to take you home whenever you are." The old woman stood up slowly. The boy helped her, steadying her arm. She took one last look around the office, the room where she had once made decisions, solved problems, and built something bigger than herself. But she didn't feel sadness. She felt peace. She walked out of the office with her sister and nephew. Before leaving the building, she turned to the boy. "Walk with me?" she asked. He nodded. They stepped outside together. The air was cool and gentle. The city lights were beginning to glow. Cars passed by. People moved along the sidewalks. And the world looked full of life again as they walked toward the waiting car. She held onto the boy's hand, not because she needed help balancing, but because she simply wanted to. When they reached the car, she turned to him and smiled. "Thank you," she whispered. "For seeing me when I felt invisible," he smiled back. "Thank you for trusting me." She got into the car and her family settled beside her. The boy stepped back onto the sidewalk, watching as the car pulled away. She waved at him through the window and he waved back, feeling a gentle warmth. In his chest, he watched until the car disappeared. Into the flow of the city, he knew he had changed her life. But he also knew she had changed his, perhaps even more. And somewhere inside the tall glass building behind him, her story lived on. A story of kindness. A story of courage.